Okay, and we're back with Joint Information Technology Oversight Committee till September 30th, 2025. And we're going to hear about the another VT buys update. I see Commissioner Manoli is here and Secretary Riley is just coming in. So I don't know how you guys were planning to present. We are live right now, just so you know. I can go in order since Secretary Riley, since you just walked in, you're in the hot seat.
Well, we planned everything together. As before, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Are you
ready for us to
We are ready.
join the table? Okay.
We are ready.
Thank you, Senator. For the record, Denise Riley Hughes, Secretary for the Agency of Digital Services, Information Officer. Oops, I'm a lot organized, so. Good afternoon, Wanda Manoli, Commissioner of Buildings and General Services.
Thank you both for coming at 12:30. We might be really at lunch. I hope you brought your lunch if you haven't finished it. So, where's that? Take it away.
So thank you for having us back. We were here, I believe it was early August. It doesn't, maybe it was late August. I don't even know. It was later August because I had a sinus infection and I was really struggling. But anyways, and we were, so there was some information at the time that you had asked, that we weren't able to provide because we were still rolling out. We had not completed bringing everyone on. So I appreciate, and there were several questions you asked, and I felt some of the follow-ups were a result of that meeting. So we have responded to you in the several questions that you laid out in writing, and BGS has provided some data. So if I could make a suggestion, if you don't mind, to the committee, is we put up the data that we have that looks at the past week, because that's going to answer, it's going to give you a sampling to some of your questions that you've asked around numbers and specific transactions, and work through the questions that way, if that's acceptable.
That sounds like a great way to go.
Are you good with that?
I'm following your lead.
Okay. Well, then save me when I start to
No, that's
fall.
okay. So as you're getting that information ready, when you look at the phases of a project, this is now what we would consider to be in the maintenance and operations phase, because we're not in the distinct project phase at the moment. And so when you look at the agile process, we're going to have some efforts around iterative change, but who the players were at the table, at least from an ADS standpoint, they change because they pass hands over to now the team that's going to manage the platform moving forward, but we've still engaged some folks from the enterprise portfolio or project management office.
Absolutely. And so with permission too, I'd just like to take a moment to quickly introduce my team. Cole Barney is in charge of our communications, external affairs, legislative processes. And Diane Neely has been with state government, I'm going to say over 20 years. I'd go with that, Diane. And Diane, actually, I worked with her at BGS many years ago. And then she moved over to AHS and the secretary's office, and actually very large agency, was managing all of the procurement and the contracts, multiple things there. And Diane came back to BGS to join us to be our business lead and analyst on the VT buys team. And so I invited her today so she could start to get an understanding of the process and the questions and the information that you look for. And she has worked tirelessly on this project, and we have a very small group of people. And do you want to introduce your team? Or do they know everyone?
I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
So.
And Commissioner, before you go, just Rep. James and Senator Brock, I cannot see you on the screen. So if you have questions, just throw them out.
Okay.
Okay. So the first thing, you actually, who uses VT buys today? We talked about this in August. VT buys is the IT platform for procurement. And it is, so everyone in state government who does contracts, commodities, utilize the system. And then suppliers are external business partners who want to do business with the state of Vermont, use VT buys. Several points throughout in your questions. You ask, does it go through VT buys or does it go to Vision? I think right up front, VT buys is the platform for beginning to end transactions for procurement. Vision is our state financial system. So VT buys integrates with Vision. So it's not one or the other, it's a consolidation. So I think if we go to this page, the first question, so before I go to that, we have created hypercare metrics. And we are tracking these at the end of every week, and we're looking at the data coming in. We are still refining and making sure we're collecting the right data, but the system that we have in place does allow us to track, set our measures, and to capture this. So I felt today was a great day to introduce you to some of that data. So the first thing you ask is about how many vendors can successfully do the basics in VT buys without staff intervention. So I think, first of all, we're not tracking what their level of competency is. We're helping them out. And I just want to point that out because I think there were some specific data points about how many people are you helping in that supplier? But what I think is really important is, I'm going to the screen if you don't mind. So as of last week, looking at the full week, we had 605 users logged into the system. And of that, we had 117 suppliers logged into the system. And what's important here is that they could be looking at bidding opportunities. They could be updating their paperwork. They could be filing an invoice for payment. So, but this just demonstrates how it's consistent, how it's being used, bi-weekly. We had 486 state users logged in, and we had the KPMG and the Valua. That's who we have our contract with. So if we go to question number 2 or data point number 2, you also are asking about who's registered, what that data is in your questions. So at last week, we have 7,985 individuals, bidders, suppliers that are either we migrated their information when we did the crossover to the new system, or they've signed up as a new supplier. What's important here is that and when we get to the next one, they're signed up. We've put all of this data in there. And now they have to register. Go ahead.
Do you know how many might be migrated?
No, I don't.
Could you get that?
We certainly can. And so and then last week we had 50 businesses initiate their registration. So we've crossed you over, you initiate your registration, and then you activate it. So that's just sort of the 3-step. But that's a snapshot in a week. Then we go to, you asked how many vendors do we expect to use the system this year? And I think you also asked us in comparison to last year. So we can't estimate that. And it's not that we don't want to. I think the simplest thing is it depends on how much money we've been budgeted for projects or for purchasing commodities. How many projects are going out to bid, and what what's happening in that given year. So I can't do an apple to apple comparison, because, well, I can't estimate, I can't estimate that because it depends on every agency is putting something into the system and we have no way of, doing a guess on what that would be.
Yeah, I have a question. So, I understand maybe can't do an estimate of like this moment in time. I'm curious, like when you did business requirements for selecting this system, and generally you must have had some kind of estimate of users that you've expected to be in the system and serving at any given time, right? So,
I started in last October, so.
or whoever did it, yeah.
I don't have that information.
Okay.
We'll capture that and we'll see what we can, if we have that to provide you.
I have
So that,
I'm sorry, sorry to
Go ahead, Rep.
interrupt. I know I can't raise my hand.
I
Maybe
can't-
maybe you'll be getting to this. But just going back to question number one, I think that the gist of the question was not only how many people are logged in, but what experience are they having with the system while they're logged in, whether it's working as anticipated, whether they need to, reach out to the staff for help. Are we going to be getting to that question?
so Chair Plunkett, you do ask that further on in the question. So we are attempting to address that. Where the problem spots are, how are they getting into it? So I'll continue to go through the data if that's okay.
Thanks.
Yep. So the other thing that you asked was, while we can't estimate the number of individuals that are going to be in the system in this given year, what's going on, what we can tell you, if you go to, we have currently 795 and number 2 identified users in the system. And then in the data, if you look at number 3 and 4, number 3 talks about sourcing, which is the internal customers seeking requests for RFPs and requests for information. This is looking at a week. And last week, we had 36 looking for the sourcing projects at the beginning, new projects. So 36 is really the beginning of a project or a contract. And I apologize, I'm reading the data wrong. Sourcing projects created, sourcing projects independent of the, we have 36 new sourcing. And we had one that was, one new one that was created. I'm saying that wrong. Now I am going to ask Diane for clarity with your permission, Chair.
36
Go
is
ahead.
the number of projects that have gone into the system since start. This is a week's data. That one was what was created last week.
So, thank you very, very much. And go ahead. And number 4 is a summary, and this goes to question 1. While we can't tell you specifically the comparison, we have in the system all active and expired, and part of the expired was contracts that carried over during the changeover, the conversion. We have 5,133. Last week, we had 34 new contracts that were in the draft process, and we executed 16. And we are also tracking, because statute asks that we try to give preferred bids, Vermonters preferred bids in certain things. So we also are tracking that metric. So last week, no contracts were issued to Vermont companies.
Yeah. Is this, so kind of in a bigger picture way, would we expect to be seeing an increase in use and numbers with this as it's going on, or would it Or is it the type of thing where sometimes it's gonna be up, sometimes it's gonna be down, but I mean,
So I think that goes back to the estimate question, sort of a little bit in my mind. So do we have some departments, and we're going to talk about this, that are still in some cases using their emergency procedure because of workflow? So we're going to get to that a little bit later. Eventually, everyone will be in the system. We always have an emergency process. So it's really going to depend on the scope of the work. And what I don't have, because I tried to figure this out last night, is a comparison to last year.
and I know you said that before, but just because of where we are and kind of who's using, I mean, would the
Right.
general sense be
Yeah.
that we're gonna see increases until it kind of plateaus and then they'll be up and down, or?
No, it's because it's the system of record now. So it's always going to be fluid. It's going to be dependent on the agency's or the department's business, because it's where they're beginning the process with a request for information to closing a contract.
But I think I heard you say not everyone is using it yet.
Right now, I think we're here to talk about, I think there's some questions that ask, everyone is, we'll get to that. Could we hold that thought till we get to that question? Because I don't want to jump at her from the speak. But back to, it's the measure is really going to be about work that's going out, contracts that are expiring that we need to renew, new construction projects, purchasing commodities, and those are seasonal. And so I really think we're going to be able to start to do quarterly comparisons, which will move to yearly, but we just don't have the data yet to totally do it. And we did not have a system before. So in the world of contracting, we might capture the number of contracts, but there wasn't a direct connection between contracts, advancing payments, costs, invoices. And that's what this platform is going to give us at the end in measures. You could pick bits and pieces and get that data.
Yeah, just a question on that, like not having any historical data to see like how to benchmark where we are right now. I'm curious, what were your measures for whether or not this was going to be successful when you did the original hopeful outcomes starting this project?
So I don't have the measures in front and I didn't set that, but I want to clarify, we have data. It's just in multiple different, it's not aligned to everything that's connected. So we can go look at visions and say, how much did we spend on invoices? But you can't, you would manually have to take that back to not manually, take it back to a contract and then try to take that data and feed it back into the information that we have in contracting, which is really paper-based Excel type of collection of data. So when I say it's not something that you can easily grab and compare that data. You'd have to go through multiple different steps. So we have data, it's just not all in one place.
I have another question, but
I'm here for you.
but I would look to, and my understanding level is not at all what yours is. So, and mine is less. So, I'd love to hear the rest of the presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm really interested. I'll ask you the question now.
Okay.
So I'm really interested in how you are assessing whether or not this is successful or not,
So strategically, I mean, we're still, it's a technical, it's a term, hypercare, right? And we're moving to O&M. We are still aligning some of our business decisions and our thought, and some things that were occurred. And I'm jumping ahead, but I have to give an example and we're going to talk about it. Workflows were designed quite a few years ago by departments. And we went, when we rolled out and we went into pre-production, pre-testing, going live, all of those terminologies, we started to learn that some of the business decisions that were made at the time that workflows were developed did not fit the department or the business today. So we rolled out and we've been successful with rolling out. We're in that care right now, or we're identifying some business decisions that were made that we need to realign and that we need to realign with the departments. And workflow is a great example of that. So I feel that we're successful.
What does that mean?
So successful is that the system is working, and when your workflow is correct and when other pieces are in place, because we've got some little glitches, the ease of the system and the goals that were set out to accomplish, to have one place to do all of these transactions and to have everything to connect, to have suppliers in one place to manage their documents and their contracts and choose what they want to be notified on bids is working. Having departments to have the ability to go in and to look at everything that's happening with their contract or their RFI or their RFP, and having that snapshot because it didn't exist in the system. There's advantages. And if everything's working out in your design flow right now, and as I said, there's a couple little hiccups, it's part of the business process, then it's successful.
Okay. I think what I heard you say is in the business units where the workflow is properly calibrated to the system and it's been rolled out, you're seeing success in and consistency and ability to use it.
And I'm acknowledging there are some that we are still working on with that and advising that, and a couple of other projects, and
I'm gonna try and mute myself.
I'm going to unmute myself.
Bring it on.
Before you go on, I'm going to unmute myself. You said a couple of things that I don't know the definitions for. It sounds like there's something specific about it. Hypercare and O&M.
Okay, so hypercare is an IT definition, an IT way of where I'm gonna let you describe it because I learned about it.
You said that, I'll take this one.
Yeah, you do hypercare.
So it is a phase that was built into this project specifically with this vendor that is a kind of an accelerated post-go live support. So there's a lot of quick hands-on. There's a lot of folks involved right now that has allowed us to go from go live to resolving some of the immediate challenges that weren't identified through the testing process or have proven a workflow to require some improvement. So there's a lot going on. O&M or M&O, maintenance and operations and maintenance happens usually post go live, and it's basically hypercare is the early stage of maintenance and operations.
And in terms of the workflows for different agencies, most of them working or are most of them not working? Or is it enabled, or are you unable to actually say?
The team on this one, so
Yeah, I think
ADS is a perfect example. So when the workflows were created, ADS wasn't an agency.
Right.
And so our processes have evolved quite a bit over the last 6 years, 7 years. And there was a decision made not to include the retainer contracts, which is a high volume of our contracting. And so we will still maintain the source of truth from a financing standpoint will be in the expenditure portion of vision. So we will still have that data sitting in vision. What we are missing is the procurement data in BT buys. And so once that is built and we can flow all IT contracting through this tool. But that was also a decision we made because we were so close to the project over the last 2 years that it would be better for internal operations to hold off in order to put the focus and intention on external operations with partners and businesses that work with the state.
And another just generic example to that when they designed the workflow, at point in time, maybe they had 3 steps to an approval process of a contract. And I'm really just giving you this as an overall example. And the business decisions, for the operation of a department may have changed where they decided they only need 2 approval processes. When we built and configured, working with our contractors, that workflow system, it was built with the 3. Now they're in using it and something's getting stuck. Getting stuck in the process. And so we've had to go back and look at all of the workflows and figure out where the bottleneck is. And I think that's the simplest, where they say, oh, we don't have a 3-step, we have a 2-step. And we've had to modify some of the workflows. And we were aware that this was going to be something that would be addressing after. I will be honest with you, it was bigger than what I think we anticipated for some of us, at least in my team. And
One last question for me. I think it might be too simplified, and tell me if it is, you don't have to answer it, but so VT Buys handles the contracting, Vision handles the payment.
yes,
So, okay.
so VT Buys it connects to Vision, right? Okay, moving right along, I think, so the next question that you asked, number 2, were all payments happen in Vision, our financial system. I think we have talked about where the payments are. I think we've answered all of your questions. And then you asked for some samples of payments. So if you go to number 5, this gives you an idea that our purchase requisitions are this is where the first thing you have to do is you have to get approval of purchase requisition. Could be for a commodity. So there is a workflow on that where you have someone approving that you do need that commodity and that you have the budget for it. Purchase requisitions turn into purchase orders. Right? So just to give you an idea, we had 295 requests of purchase requests last week. The overall, that equaled $7 million of purchase requests in business. We have created we created 1,868 purchase orders, which totaled 19 million. And there's an attachment B, which is a snapshot since we've gone live. So you can sort of take a look at your leisure of the 2 comparisons where we're capturing August or July to a current date. And then this is a snapshot of the week. But in August, to be specific, we paid, we had 2,630 invoices processed, and that was about $95 million.
Per person.
So, yeah, and again, I think I'm asking a repeat question, but just, confirming, there's no way to, figure out how much the state's process and invoices at the same time last year, so we can know whether or not we're seeing a major or minor, decrease or increase in basically like making it easier for people to process invoices and receive payment, or whether or not we have like a stopgap urgent issue that is.
So first of all, we can look at the comparison data. I will have to talk to our finance team to answer that in comparison. But I am going to say you can't, I don't believe you can make that, the comparison is not an apple to apple comparison. Last year, money that was appropriated to departments in the capital bill in their budget was X amount, and those projects for commodities or contracts. Knowing what each of those specifics are to compare it to where we are today, you can't do it. So to look at Department of Buildings and General Services and say, last year at this time, I processed 16 contracts and I made 20 vendor payments. And this year I processed 10 and I made 11 vendor payments. it's project specific, it's scope specific. So it's not gonna get, I think, the information that you're trying to ask. Are we behind you? It's really like, if we were at this level of production last year and we're at 60% and we were at 40 last year, are we behind? Is the system not working for us? You can't get that data to make that decision.
So there's no way to judge success or failure on this and whether or not there's a massive issue going on.
That's a different question. That you're
Okay.
saying, how could we measure the success or the failure or major issue with this? And we can, I don't have that, we can think about that and talk to you more about our measures, but the system is live and the system is working. It is a modernization system that has some flaws. I don't like using the word bugs, but it's got some technical issues. We're aware of those and we are working on those. And that to me is what's the most important with the investment. So I think the success would be, do we accomplish all of the fixes? Do we make it user friendly? Are we meeting our customers' needs and are they successful in using it?
So this is maybe I'm gonna stop talking, waiting until later to ask more questions, but because earlier, like the theme, I just want you to know, like we started off today going over like how can this committee best perform oversight duties? What are the types of questions we should be asking across all software projects? How do we know when a like implementation is successful across all, like how can we replicate successful processes? How do we interrupt ones that are failing and make sure it doesn't happen again? So in general, like that's where these questions are coming from. That's also where all of our questions today have come from, is like, how can we as a committee, one, help support if you need infrastructure, money, that kind of stuff, and help standing committees understand the weeds and help them because they don't have time to go over everything. But my questions are coming from, yeah, like how do we perform oversight if we can't get any detail into like what actually is happening? That's what we're trying to do.
I think those are great questions. I am trying to provide you insight of what's really happening, but hearing the overall questions, I think the secretary probably should just have some comment, because I think if I were asked those questions, I might be thinking based on the system how I would measure that. But do you want to just generally talk about that for the state? Because it's really a broader, not specific.
So for this particular one, I would say this is an example of what I described in earlier testimony today, where you have some modernization projects that are modernizing IT infrastructure, and then you have other modernization projects that are creating new. This is a good example of creating new. And in doing so, if we use established and flexible business processes to inform how technology should be configured, then we can mitigate future issues. If we use that opportunity to design and configure before, I think that pose challenges. And so we are working on establishing some more comprehensive phases and stages through the life cycle of system solutions, let's call it opportunities, and making sure that you can't pass to the next stage until you have met those requirements. And I think in this particular case, we're both coming to this project at the end, used it as an opportunity to get a handle on things. And when you're talking about measures, the technology measures are really irrelevant compared to what the business measures are. And so how BGS is now able to take something that was realistically managed by one person and now have a help desk and a support team and actually demanding consistency across business offices to do the same thing. Those are areas where we can now show that that's what's happening. And we can also show that there's struggles there too. And that's a reality of when you do things the same way for the last 20 years and all of a sudden you have to do something different, you have to think differently and change is hard. So we would expect that in this stage of the game. And when we can now see, like hearing the commissioner share the measures that she's looking at, she didn't have that before. She wasn't that information. And I do think that we could start looking at year over year comparisons. We don't have the ability to look at the vision data the same way.
Right.
Or was it a voucher or was it a PO or was it a this or, I don't know the different mechanisms in the vision system, but now that we've set a standard, folks are going to have to follow that standard. So what would be really great is to now start focusing on what those standards are for this committee and where there is the need for intervention or oversight, I think really needs to come as we start planning out what that second phase looks like and whether or not we are capturing what those top issues are within the help desk. And I don't mean to be speaking on behalf of your team, but I know we work so close together. Making sure that we have the right technical team in place too. So when this was first envisioned, positions weren't a thought in that. And we don't want to be fully partner managed. We really want to be ABS managed as well. So we've got some opportunities.
Absolutely.
And I think that that's the path that we've been going down since you were able to join the team.
And Secretary, I really appreciate that. And I just do want to, that comment about we have opportunities. And many business decisions were made about this system. What I think we all can agree on is that the state needed a procurement system. We had nothing in tracking this and this was an e-procurement system to manage. You can just see the amount of money in just looking at 1 week and the number of invoices that go through. And you think about everyone's budget. You think about, even from the budget standpoint in the legislature where, you're requesting services or we're doing construction projects. This is where it's housed. This is where it is all managed. And it's nice to be able to start looking at the data to really see, even for my contracting team, the amount of work they're moving through and the amount of work that state government is doing.
So my question was going to be, how should we be, for the secretary, providing oversight? And I think you did a great job answering it. Talking about you need to be looking at the standards and then measuring the data on those standards, perhaps, which then says to me, we're probably not looking at data that is really helpful in terms of providing oversight, but it's what you have.
Well, and it also is a response. I think it's been a great conversation saying this is the goal of the committee, but you were, I think, asking these questions to try to be able to get to some of those goals. So I'm really giving you the data, how we read the questions on invoices and stuff. So yes. Would you like us to continue?
Please.
Okay, so I'm not going to, so we were just talking about, one of the questions you asked is how long does a payment take? So in the state of Vermont, we have a base 30 net in our contracts, 30-day payment. Because we talked about the workflow briefly, not to get into the details, this is one of them. We do have some invoices that have been currently backlogged in the system, stuck in the system. So transparency, and that is a part of it is the approval process. A part of it, and that's probably the biggest, it's connected back to the workflow.
If you don't mind.
No,
Because now you can actually see that.
That's a
See it
great-
before.
yes,
And that's a point of measure now that we can work towards. And with
yes.
Diane's team that's in place, they can start reporting on that and be proactive about those that are hanging. So is it hanging because the approval process was built in VT buys, or is it hanging because that's how that business office had been operating and we just didn't have visibility into it? So this is creating an immense amount of transparency and visibility that we didn't have before.
That's right. And it is one, because I think you all asked, like, what are the top three? One of the questions. This is one of them. So we recognize it, we're aware of it, and our team is diligently working on correcting it and working with all of the business partners on it.
With that specific thing, it's VT buys, there was something that wasn't there. That's the bottleneck and not the integration with Vision. Or is it?
It's the workflow decision for the design on VT buys for each of the departments and entities. It's not a vision issue. It's not the IT solution. It's the decisions that were made for approval process. I'm trying
It's the
to,
human side.
it's the human side.
And development for the project started in 2018, right?
We both.
So I see
I think that's
documents
correct.
back from 2016, 2017.
Earlier.
So there's,
Yeah.
that's why I said pre-ADS. And it had a little bit of a hiatus during the pandemic. And with what we're talking about on the life cycle flow that we're working on, if we were to ever have something like that happen again, and we created a hiatus on a project, it wouldn't be able to just pick up where it left off in the future. So that is, I think, something that we should see differently in how these things will flow. But we really need to look at doing a bit of a reevaluation before we continue on. But I think too, with various business offices, they may be comfortable with how they were doing things before, but they had a disparate system that we didn't have visibility into, that your office of procurement and contracting couldn't see. And so now that we have built a model for data integrity and contract integrity and procurement, it's now a matter of getting those business offices back up to the table to say, okay, we're asking you to now do things differently. Where are your needs not being met? And then versus where is this an exception to the rule? And
Correct.
I know you would like to see less exceptions to the rule and really create more of that standard model, which is
Yes.
what was originally envisioned in the way that the workflows are built.
That's right. And just on a temperature of where the project is with this, I think we, where we're at, we're still in an okay place, right? This project just really rolled out at the end of July, August, we're in September. So we've hit our markers that we wanted to in rolling out. And now, we're back to, in certain areas, we're finding concerns from departments, and they're real, and we have to address them. But we are, we have to look at, is it a system statewide? Is it a specific department? And this goes back to, we have new staff. We're aligning, we're working together. We are addressing the concerns. It's not comfortable, because, I think it's not comfortable for everyone because it's change. But, we're committed. We're committed to getting this aligned. And, I think what is a reasonable amount of time? I think being not even a whole quarter, with an IT new, I think that was really important. With a new system rolling out, you are going to have aftercare or hypercare, and you're going to have to make modifications. But it's not broken. And you don't have to start over. I know, I think some of you have talked, yeah, I just want to say that. I'll stop there. Any questions? Do you want me to continue through this list?
Good question.
You had said, so now if there's a hiatus, we would not just pick up where we left off, but how is that encapsulated in processes or?
Not related to this project and this
Yeah.
effort specifically, but we're going through some pretty big changes at my agency around modernizing and replacing processes and standards to make sure that we are built for the enterprise. And we are actually piloting one of the phases right now through a couple of projects, one being intake. And that was influenced by stakeholders from across the state and different branches and elected offices.
So if we wanted to do oversight on that process, that would be talking to the agency about their project intake
Yes,
process.
you would talk to us because it would, where we get involved. Sorry.
No, I think that's part of what the community's trying to figure out. We're talking, I think using this one as a sample, example is probably a little.
I think we also have an advantage too, when you have a new system like this or the UIM system, you are representing a body of residents across the state of Vermont too, where you are receiving feedback from them on certain things. Completely different lens than what we're looking at, but that's another opportunity as well, is that sometimes we won't know until you share that with us. I had a resident say this, we've had emails forwarded to us from legislators and from other folks. We also have colleagues, neighbors from within the state that have said, hey, I had to use this system. And my first opportunity is sit down, tell me about this. I want to know what was so I'll really dig in with them, but we've created that space with the help desk as well, so that you're not just checking check boxes, but keeping that flow of communication going is really important. So when you do hear these things, please bring them forward.
Yeah, I just have a question. So I totally understand that software projects all are gonna have a change management process and nobody likes change. That's like it's a whole thing. But at the same time, I understand you have to keep, making fixes to things that are happening. I'm curious, especially like the VT Digger article that came out where it was talking about vendors who are saying that, basically the risk that I saw, this is a question about risk. Like a risk that I saw as a result of that article was, are we going to be frustrating certain vendors, certain state employees, thinking of trickle down of whether it's a vendor who's doing construction or whether it's a vendor who's aiding in human service solutions for social service solutions for people. Like this system touches way more than any other system, maybe with only the ERP, like in the same ballpark as far as how many stakeholders are involved. So I'm curious, at what point are we able to tell that the risk is something that is actually going to interrupt money into the state business just the flow of business, I guess, and the flow of like employee satisfaction, honestly. And in certain cases, if we're hearing feedback from certain constituents, vendors, and even in the Digger article, it said vendors, 2 of the 3 were not comfortable going on the record because they didn't want to be retaliated against. The same with staff. If we're hearing things from staff, they may not want to go on the record because they fear retaliation. So I'm just curious, like, I'm having a hard time. I have heard from people, and so I don't know how to, from these numbers that are being presented about how things are currently going, we're not able to see what the risks are of what we're dealing with here.
I would just say there are laws in place to protect whistleblowers. So if somebody feels that they are in a situation, regardless of whether or not we're talking about this or not,
Okay.
there are protections against retaliation. So I just want to make clear that is, that's a big accusation.
It's not a question. Yeah, it's not an accusation. It's a question, like a fear.
And the same thing with vendors is that's that I don't think that really reflects the work that the state is doing. What I would just advise though is feedback is that, right? It's feedback, and we do a lot of fact checking on the information that we have. And when I had actually the day of testimony in August, you and I both received an email from a Vermont business owner who had expressed concerns, and looking in the system, your team had indicated that their check was already being issued for payment on that day. And so they had received the funds by the following day from what the reporting was saying. So again, without having the data to go back and see what was the net terms before? Was that being followed? Did we have an issue? Now we have an opportunity to look at that. And we also talked about the blackout period that we used as the opportunity, which is blackout period that exists every year. So we can look at that type of data, but I would say too, if we're finding 3 businesses out of the thousands that had registered and that $100 million that had gone through, I would say that those are positive metrics, although those 3 individual organizations, and I know that you guys have done a lot of outreach as well.
Yep.
That the team has been touching each of those spaces. I don't want to speak on your behalf.
No, of course, I'm not, but I just want to say, it's normal to hear some of the things that we heard. And I think that's also what the secretary is saying. And as you roll out, again, if you look at the number of users, the number of profiles we have in the system, you know, between the suppliers and between our internal and external partners, I think there are 5,000 profiles. You know, all of those people are going to touch it and many things are going to click and go smooth. And then they're going to have a situation that just isn't right. That's why we have a team. That's why we're there to work through it. And, you know, so, you know, were there some invoices late? Absolutely were. We have 80 invoices that are stuck. I talked about that earlier, but to the secretary's point, we have 80 invoices stuck, but you can look at the data and you can see just as of 9/21, we processed 663 and $15 million. Why are these stuck? It's not the general, it's the small number, but you have to focus on the 20% right now. Because the 20% is where in the system we just everything doesn't totally align. Clearly, the workflow at the department levels has been some level of frustration. And we'll acknowledge that and we're working on that. And we're working in partnership with them. And there are a couple other things that, you know, I mean, we're engaged in conversations, and from the agency level, from the department level, they're communicating with us on things about the system that may not be perfect for their department or can we look at it. It's also important for you, the legislators and the public to know, we still have every department has an emergency procedure in place to move contracts and to move payments forward. So for any reason, if there's something in a specific department that's stuck in a workflow, there's an alternative. And we have had departments use those and we have managed those and so we are engaged in conversations and we are trying to work through any concerns that people have.
And sometimes it takes me a little bit to process my thoughts after you've asked some of the questions, but looking at it from the lens of oversight, you're asking some pretty interesting questions that I'm taking notes on, which is, you know, as you're sharing statistics, would it be helpful to see average days to pay, right? Like, is that a statistic that can be built into the reporting? Year over year, we'll come back next year and be able to have year over year data, which is great. But when it comes to those measures, how EGS was tracking before versus the availability of what can track now also gives them the lens to look at things a little bit differently too. So
Yeah.
it's just good. They're great questions.
The emergency measure, what's the trigger for that?
Well, you know, I may have a department that we haven't finished out their workflow and they need to get invoices paid and moved. So they have an internal process where they can put that into, it's a little bit of rework for them.
Yeah,
But
they might be just doing that.
it's right. So they may be putting it directly, paying it through Vision, and then they keep that, and then once we get their workflow resolved, then they'll have to re-enter some of that data back into the VT buy system. Because you gotta remember, it's now a system that your vendor and your department and the data that you're looking at is all the same. So, you know, I'm a construction company and I'm calling and, you know, I'm looking at something. everybody's looking at the same information. You're not going to multiple different places to collect information or manage your account or see where that payment is. So, I mean, that's critical, but we haven't stopped that, we still, we have we have a sole source contract or a retainer contract, as the secretary referred to. We have a process for that. So we're not stopping Vermont's business or contracting or payments. We've had some payments stuck and we work on those as soon as we're notified.
And that's really what I was getting to. If you're notified, you might.
Absolutely.
We only have 3 minutes left. So Rep. Priestley has a question, and I just wanted to point out we need 3 minutes.
Oh.
Senator Brock would love to have 1 minute.
Actually,
Yeah,
Senator Brock, go
please
ahead.
I just have several questions. The first is, have you heard anything from your independent auditors who've been in to do your audits, say the past year, about these kinds of system changes and the effect? Comments one way or the other?
Senator, I'll have to follow up from BGS. I'm not aware, I don't know statewide, secretary, how you would. Yeah.
This would be the kind of thing that independent auditors during the course of their audits would be looking at and might have a comment on, and it would be useful to obtain. The second is there a systematic process to gain input from the various audiences that are involved with this? There, I'm talking about employees, I'm talking about vendors, and obviously other agencies within government.
Yeah. So for this particular project, Senator, we do there's a very large working group that represents all of the departments. They do their weekly updates. They have a form of communication. They were a part of the design team, in rolling this out, the development. They are the ones that are bringing these glitches. I don't know what to call them, bugs, fixes. They're the ones, because they're using the system, that are bringing this information back to us and identifying.
The only caution that I have is that often different audiences bring back different pieces of information, and those who have hands-on bring back very different information than those who are users. Just a thought.
You are absolutely correct, Senator, and I think, we are looking at it from that lens too, right? In the evaluation or the prioritization. It may be an individual, or it could be a system, a department-wide, concern.
Yeah. The last thing that I would mention is just something to ask whether you're thinking about, and that is information technology is advancing every day, particularly the use of AI. When will this be obsolete? That's just a thought.
No time soon.
No time soon.
No time soon. No.
That we are at the
One more,
1:30.
come on.
So I'm gonna stop us now. We might have other questions. We'll reach out and probably not have you come back in, but we might
Okay.
ask for responses from.
So thank you for the opportunity to discuss the status specifically about VT-Buys. I know we provided you specific to the process, but I think there is broader items that you do want to look at.
I appreciate all of that discussion, especially when we touched on more of the broader processes.
Yep.
That's
So,
good. So thank you very much.
thank you.
You guys are from the DBC.
Yes.
So once you're ready. Hello.
I brought you some treats. I know, but you know,
Terry, of course.
I'm not Terry Corso, so.
She can come to my office anytime.
Thank you so much.
famous.
And keep it, because,
We do.
Yes,
We're leaving.
We'll send them to Senator Brock and Rep. Cam.
well, I know you have a few other meetings after this, right? So.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
I really appreciate what you do. So, thank you.
Great. Well,
This is under the, I think this is under the declaring one, right?
I'm not going to comment. So let's just jump right in. I know we only have a half an hour. So we're here about judiciary IT cybersecurity. So
Yes.
please introduce yourselves. I hope you know who we are. We're not going to go through that right now, but let us know who you are. And
I'm Marcia Shells. I'm the Chief Technology Innovation Officer for the judiciary, which is our equivalent of CIO. And I've been there for just now 4 years. And I'll let Joe introduce himself. And Joe, as you'll hear from his title, is really the expert at this particular area. So I'm really here more for questions if you have them, but Joe is going to give us the main presentation. So please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, folks. Good to see some familiar faces again. Name is Joe Paquin. I'm the Director of Cybersecurity Infrastructure and Technology Support Services for the judiciary.
Yeah, he wears 3 hats. We're a small team, so we have multiple roles.
how big is your team?
26 people for IT, and the department is about, the judiciary is about 400. Plus, I mean, it's a little bigger with some temporary employees, but like 400 permanent.
The IT org structure is pretty flattened. There's not a whole lot of pyramid. So it's myself and another director and Marcia and a couple of managers, and the rest are folks that are doing the actual good work. So.
Yeah, so I'll just say, you know, we've been very busy over the last 4 years. We basically, when I started, they had just literally completed the Odyssey, Tyler Technologies Odyssey implementation, which is the case management system. It went live 4 years ago in August with the Supreme Court, which was the last one. It was about a 3 or 4 year project. And so started out right then, and everything else has been replaced. Now, we have a few more wires to do, but down to the wires in the courthouses. We have also implemented our own network, separating from the executive branch. We've upgraded our jury management system. We put in a digital evidence management system. We've replaced all the hardware. We've replaced all the desktop machines. We've replaced the sound systems in the courthouses. And we are in the process of converting from WebEx to Zoom in all the courthouses. And so the infrastructure team has been very busy going to courthouses over the last 3 years. And in the next couple of months, they should be finishing that up. So it's really exciting it was really a big modernization project. And then as part of that, we, especially under Joe's leadership here, decided to really lock it down as much as possible because of the world we live in and the need for cybersecurity protections. So the way this memo is written, it's the 3 sections: prevention, detection, and response. And Joe really picked like best of breed what fit with our network and our systems to really ensure we had the best in each of those. So I'll let you go into more specifics.
I won't go on all of the stuff. You guys have the memo in front of you, but just a couple of things I like to point out. As a branch of government, our uptime is super important to us. So if you go to status.vtcourts.gov, it gives you real-time updates of our network, our capabilities, our web presence. For any constituents, we actually have lots of lawyers and folks that subscribe to the page. And we're really proud of our network and our core court function remaining online for a little over 2 years with 0 outages. Now, we've had a little bit like this website was down or this little thing was down, but our core function to provide judicial process has remained online for that entire time. And the other thing, turning towards locking things down. I actually surprised one of our cybersecurity vendors when they're like, yeah, we're your trusted partner. And I was like, well, I don't even trust you. So one of the things of implementing a network that is secure is not fully trusting any one of your vendors, because as we have seen with several of the things lately, Cisco has had some pretty significant vulnerabilities. Luckily, we don't use Cisco hardware, but Microsoft had significant vulnerabilities just a few months ago. So being very hesitant to fully engage in trust but verify with every single one of your vendors. So that's really just my stance on how we move forward with our cybersecurity footprint is constantly validating and replacing technologies if they need to be, as we have done with our SOC as a service. So I'll just let that open for questions because it is only a half hour. So
I want to mention one other thing, and that is that we're also striving very hard to keep all of our systems up to date, including like the case management system. And in fact, I was just out at an executive forum with Tyler Technologies for court systems, and they were giving statistics about software as a service customers where they're hosting their application versus on-prem, like we still are, where we're hosting the application. And the number of updates is like significantly, I think it's at least 4 times more for their software as a service. So they go, except for Vermont. And I'll just say that Vermont has kept up to date. We have our 3 environments, and because that's good customer service too, because that's, they keep rolling out new features or fixes for us. And their newest release, which is called 2025, should be generally available. They're in like their, what do they call the first wave pilots right now? But it should be available in January, and we're planning to be the first unified court system state to go live on that, so that because it's more secure, and that way we can get new features. So in addition to all the prevention, we also have our applications that we keep up to date.
I'm going to make a joke first.
Okay.
I don't want to have to verify that I'm human anymore by picking out 5 hats. Clearly, I'm an attorney. But the questions might go a little beyond cybersecurity since you're here.
Sure.
And hopeful. But one of the things that you had mentioned that we had discussed before was that you're completely separate from the executive branch.
Yes.
Explain to us why that is, if you can.
Sure. Well, when I started, we were using their network, and we were using the desktop support, and I had my own help desk, so that was a little curious to me. So it seemed duplicative, and we were using their cybersecurity services. But what we found was that, the reliability of the network was not good. And it was going down, and was preventing courts from being able to be, as our CIO, court administrator said, preventing justice from being served. There were days when the courts couldn't be held. So, and it was also slow. And I don't think I'm sure the executive branch had grown as well, but with the COVID pandemic and us having remote hearings with WebEx, I'm sure that was adding to the network traffic, as well as the new case management system. And it wasn't sized properly for that. And we're, a small branch, so I can only imagine and so we were not, we also were not like the primary customer. When this network went down, the executive branch was more focused on the executive branch than the judiciary. And the communication was not great. Like we recently you had to reset one of our edges, and you were able to do that yourself. Whereas in the past, like you said, it was almost like a bit of a black hole trying to communicate and get information. We also were not, didn't feel like we knew a lot about what was going on with cybersecurity. And so we really wanted to just, as a CIO, I want to be able to control the environment that I am managing, and I didn't have that. So that's really what it came down to.
Yeah.
And in fact, we had our own help. I'll let you speak in a second. Sorry. We had our own help desk, and we had, basically we had all the pieces in place. We had and with Joe and a couple other hires, we had the people we needed along with our vendor partners to implement the network. And so we made that case to the legislature. And that was the final piece I wanted to say, and we saved money because there was overhead associated with ADS, especially, buying software through them. They had our Microsoft contract before, using their help desk services. We had to buy our PCs through them before. It was a bottleneck, and it was expensive. So now we own our own destiny.
This is Senator Brock. May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
when was the last time the chief information officers of the three branches of government met together?
Well,
I can give you a date of when a representative, either the chief information officer or the person who was in charge of cybersecurity. So I met with the CISO from ADS and Kevin and Rain on.
here they are, Kevin and Rain.
The 27th. We meet monthly now. At least one of us will show. I took your feedback to heart the last time we met Senator Brock, and I was like, well, we're just going to do it. And so we've been doing that on a monthly basis.
The communication has improved in the past 4 years. And it's actually improved since we've separated, believe it or not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I don't know if that's the question.
Any other questions from the committee? I'm just more familiar with you, Sherry, than others. So the switch from WebEx to Zoom, what is the impetus for that?
So WebEx, it was done in a hurry. It was done before we were here. It turns out it's very expensive. Those big screens that are in all the courthouses are proprietary and end of life. They have an end of life coming up in 2026, February 2026. So they would all have to be replaced. And the WebEx software at the same time has not kept up with the features that the court system needs. And they basically weren't interested in modifying the product. Whereas Zoom has over 50% of the court systems in this country and has all the features that we need. And the hardware is not proprietary. We can buy the hardware as a commodity and replace it as needed. So I don't know, does that kind of sum it up?
That does sum it up. So just to put it into financial perspective, to replace the WebEx equipment, it would have cost about $10 million because they gave us a big deal during the pandemic to get us bought into the product. And to replace it with the equipment that we're rolling out, I don't know where you, Pennington, so we're 2 weeks, you'll see it. We have been rolling out the new hardware, which costs us about $3 million. It was a huge savings, and Zoom has already made some feature adjustments for us to allow us to function in a manner that is much more conducive to our environment. We have deployed new hardware. We're not using Zoom yet in Addison County, Grand Isle County, Caledonia County, one of the Windham County courthouses, and one of the Washington County courthouses.
And the Supreme Court.
And the Supreme Court. So they've been using the new hardware for some of them 6 weeks now. And we're using WebEx on this non-proprietary hardware that can use WebEx or Zoom or Google Meets or Teams, which turns these rooms into multifunction rooms as well. But also if we decide in the future that Zoom has moved away from the court's function and process, we can pivot to a different vendor in a simpler manner.
And the feedback from the bar and the judges has been very positive. Everyone's excited.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Okay, that's great.
The 20.
But we try to be we're very customer focused. More, I don't start with IT. We start with what the customer need is. So I'm very happy that this is a win-win.
Sorry, 3 weeks, 24th. 24th. Sorry, I know. It's all a blur. Every Friday night we work till like 2 or 3 in the morning to get the court switched over.
We're trying to do it after, weekends.
So.
Well, I could probably ask questions all day long, but I don't want to keep you longer than necessary. So if the committee doesn't have any more questions, I want to thank you, and we can move on to legislative IT, or if the committee wants to take a break, we could do that.
Hope to get some water.
Great. So we'll take about a 5 minute.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, and great meeting you.
Good to see you all again.